All right, we're live. Sweet. If you guys are in the chat box and you guys can see us, can you guys say what's up? That would help a lot. And I got my buddy Drew Michaels here. There he is.
Hey guys, happy to be here. Cam, thanks for having me.
We're going to get started in just a moment, but just while we're getting going, I'm going to find the link to blast this out. Can you guys hear us in the chat? Just say that you can hear us in the chat if you can. Sweet. Where are you at right now, Drew?
I'm in Union Square right now, hiding in a big office with lots of empty space. So
yeah,
you kind of echo we get on my voice going here.
Yeah, that's in Denver, right?
No, I'm actually
there's like 100 Union
a friend
Squares.
in common in Denver, and I met him there. But I'm based out in New York.
Got it, man. Yeah. So here's a question before we begin. Why does America have to use the same names for everything? Like Penn Station, Union Square. Like some towns have like how many different towns have the same, like Portland, Maine, Portland, Oregon? Why can't we use unique names? That's what I want to know.
Well, I'm assuming, there's two things. One, a name sounds good for whatever reason, like Portland. Like, wow, in a port, I'm going to use this to my advantage. And, if one got already taken, people don't want to lose that. But I'm also assuming, there's also locations of envy. So people are like, I want this to sound like heavily metropolitan because I want people to relocate there and I want to make it as attractive as possible. Hence, you've got the whole Greenland, Iceland difference where sometimes those kind of like go in the opposite direction. It's pretty interesting.
America is such an interesting place.
Yeah. We got Michael Jackson saying lack of culture here.
I don't know about that. I think it's just a hilarious culture. So yeah, guys, if you guys can hear us in the chat, just say, hey, we're going to talk with my buddy Drew about dating apps, talk about social anxiety, talk about meeting people, all that fun stuff. Drew is going to introduce himself in a second, but I've seen some of the work that he's doing. And I think for you guys as people who I know for me, when I quit gaming, one of the biggest reasons was because I wanted to improve my social skills and improve my ability to meet and attract women. So that's obviously like a big topic that goes on in our community. And so I thought I'd bring Drew on today. I'm wearing a black shirt today, but I'm wearing a Limitless sweater. My friend from 6th Streets in my hometown, this is a Calgary company, Limitless. So I thought I'd throw that on.
I like the message.
Yeah, so Drew, just quickly, introduce yourself. How did you get into this area of your life, and tell us a bit about kind of like your story.
Sure, and I'll try to be brief. I know I can sometimes drone on. I'm just another guy like searching for the right one for him. And I kind of open with that because I'm just one of those very curious people where if I can figure out a way of being efficient in something, including life, I will do it. So when I was in my 20s, I got really interested in human psychology, female attraction psychology, since I was looking for a woman, and really putting pieces together, not from an inauthentic way, but more like how do you take who you are and amplify that and clearly communicate that in a way where it's still attractive and it's still dynamic and it still makes an impact. And I've been consulting with guys on the side for probably since 2007. And more recently, because of the advent of dating apps, I basically, mad scientist that I am, I came up with this really interesting process of plugging in certain phrases and certain words that are guiding a conversation on a dating app from going there on that phone to actually meeting out in the real world. Because I've got this attitude that, until you actually meet somebody in person, you're never really going to know what kind of authentic connection might be there. So, basically probably 3 years ago, I founded higherleveldating.com. And only in the last year did I really focus on the dating apps part, just because it's been getting so interesting and the guys I've been working with have been just getting these very cool stories and very cool results.
Right. So this is like the number one question that we have to ask because a lot of people are going to be concerned about it. So how do you see dating? I know you mentioned the word authentic, right? So how do you see approaching learning the skill of dating while not becoming a weird pickup artist?
Right. Well, this is the way I see it. There's a truth to everybody. And the challenge isn't whether you're going to be truthful or not. I mean, that's a choice. You either choose to be a real person or not. The challenge is communicating with your words that communicates that truth. So, for example, if you're the type of person that you want women to think that you're in shape, and you go like, hey, listen, honestly, I'm in shape. I work out 10 times a day. I do all this and I do all that. It kind of comes across as inauthentic, even if it's true. But what if that's really who you are? Well, if that's really who you are, and it's not some made-up lie, then you're also going to be genuinely interested in a woman who's also in shape, because you're going to want to go to the gym with her, and you're going to want to run with her, and you're going to want to do those types of activities. So the type of person who's actually being authentic, even though he means that, he isn't going to say, I go to the gym all the time. He's going to say, would you like to go to the gym with me? So it's just a minor, subtle, distinct change in your language that doesn't really change what the truth is and still allows you to be who you really are. And it looks like you might have frozen on the screen with me. All right, so then we lost Cam on things. While we're going through that, I want to make sure that you guys are all set. As I was beginning here, were there any questions that were kind of popping up for you? All right, Worm's asking, I can answer the mad pharmacist question. If you can write that one out for me just to make sure I'm answering the right one for you.
Am I back?
There we go.
Yo,
I can hear your voice.
All day, my computer's been like just restarting. So you guys got to hang in there with us.
No worries.
Okay, Mad's question was, what do you think about the best time to start a sexual cohabitation? That's quite the way to say it, with women. You can still hear me? Okay, so it was more like, how do you kind of move the relationship forward?
Okay. Wow, that could be answered in so many different ways. Are you asking like how do you move something forward from platonic to physical?
Yeah, that's definitely what he's referencing.
Right. Okay. Well, the best way I could really answer that question is, well, actually, let me ask one more question. Are we talking about someone that you're already a friend with that you want to move it forward with? Or are we talking about just in general, you started dating somebody and you want to make sure that you move that in the right direction?
Yeah, so you're friends with them and you want to move that forward.
So going from friendship to something more, it's always a risk because you are already in this box with them. And the only way that I've ever, like I've done it, but I've never really enjoyed doing it personally. I always prefer just to kind of like leave that alone. But I know people have crushes and they have things going on. So the best way that I've always found to do it is really kind of throwing in little subtle flirtation through whatever conversations you're having, ramping it up and seeing what kind of reactions you get, because there's always going to be subtle buying signals if that's being received the right way. So if you really want to go in that direction, it's just about, subtly flirting. And obviously, no matter how close you go or how far you go, it might come to a point where you're going to have to make a choice of, I'm either going to be friends with this person or I'm going to be with them or like nothing at all. It might be like one or the other. And then that's going to be your choice. Like, am I willing to sacrifice the friendship to really just say, hey, listen, I'm feeling you right now. Why don't we like hang out just us in a different way and see how we get along and see if we vibe? And Cam, looks like your connection's dying a little bit again here. Is your audio good?
It's tragic. It's a tragic turn of events for me, but I shall not be denied. So, cool. Yeah, so War just asked a great question, which is the question I was going to ask, which is, I know a lot of people in our community, they understand the word flirt, right? They understand like flirting is going to be something important to do. Mm-hmm. But how do you flirt? Like flirting is hard. Flirting is something that if you don't really know, like I feel like I can be pretty flirty. I'm a pretty flirty guy, but if you don't know how to flirt, how do you begin that process?
Wow. It's subtle little things. So beginning the process it's almost going to sound silly, but even when you see that person in the day, it's kind of just like, you know, you're going to say hi in a different way. There's going to be a little more bass in your voice. And we're actually going to go a little bit deep here, because the thing is, whenever you're being a certain type of person, whether you're being magnetic to them, whether you're being attractive, whatever that might be, it's really based on, you know, how you feel about yourself and how you feel about them. Meaning, if you were actually coming from the attitude of this person really wants me, and it wasn't a thing of you trying to make them want you, but you already had that, you're going to say something to them and look at them in a totally different way. You're going to make different eye contact. You're going to just carry yourself. And, you know, obviously we're in a day and age where you have to be really careful about how you put your hands on people. So I'm not going to broach that topic too much, but it really is about, you know, it just starts with like, you can kind of like say, hey, what's going on? And even kind of like subtly putting things in where like you're inviting them to do something, whether it's after work or after school, whatever your age might be, and kind of see where they go with it. Depending on how deep you want to take it also, a lot of people get flirty in the sense that they get a little, I wouldn't say arrogant, but they get a little cocky. They'll make little jokes like that imply that there is an attraction there. So for example, if the girl like would bump into you by accident, you'd be like, that's okay, I understand that was on purpose, but let's move on, let's go forward here. Like subtle little jokes, subtle little things that kind of like make you say that you're with them on it. Mm-hmm. And stop me if I'm trailing off on that, Cam, at all, please.
Yeah, so I think there's a really fine balance between being flirty and being passive aggressive. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, like for you, how does, I know in what you recommend for dating apps, which is kind of, I mean, you can maybe go through a couple of the different sections, but a lot of it's around allowing them to come to you and spiking curiosity and kind of creating an opportunity for them to kind of take a step forward and express some interest. Now in person, there's going to be a difference where as a man, you need to be assertive. You need to not be passive aggressive. If you're interested in someone, being willing to step into that and suggest that. But I'm kind of curious, like, how do you feel the differences between being flirty and not being passive aggressive?
Mm-hmm. Well, we actually veered off in a certain direction, so I'll try to answer your question. But you know, I'm always more comfortable again starting from zero rather than going from friendship to something like to turning that into a relationship. I'm more of a proponent of starting fresh. Like you go out with someone in the beginning, it's established right there. This is something that might be, you know, it might be a real relationship or it might be a real connection. And the whole thing about it is, it isn't even it has to be something where you have to say a lot. If you say one or two things, that's going to set the tone, and then everything else is in a context for that. So to answer your question, like being, you know, flirty versus passive aggressive, well, passive aggressive puts the other person down. Mm-hmm. So, you know, even that joke of like, hey, I know you bumped into me on purpose, it's okay. It wasn't saying, you know, you suck, how dare you touch me. It's kind of like it's a joke and there's a little smirk when you say it and there's a little kind of glint in your eye, and it's understood, and women read this way better than guys, so you don't have to be too over the top with it. It's just like a subtle little thing where you joke around, and again, I'm the type of person where on a date I'm not doing that as a technique. It kind of comes out in my personality, but I'm gonna say something like that 2 or 3 times throughout a first date. And everything else is more just like a regular conversation. That's I think where people really get lost. People are trying to figure out, how do I phrase my words perfectly and guide things in the right direction? And I teach that on dating apps because you're stuck on a text message where there's no eye contact, there's no vocal inflection, there's no physical contact, you're not there in person. So you have to use certain techniques in that way. But when you're in person with somebody, it's more along the lines of the fact that you're not trying to exert yourself too much, and the fact that you're just there and you're present in who you are, that in of itself carries a lot more weight and makes you magnetic and makes you attractive without you having to put too much into the situation. And you're giving her the gift of your authenticity, which is also giving her the gift to be authentic with you.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And I think, we can talk more about this, but being authentic in the way of not pretending to be something that you're not is really, really important. And sometimes we want to pretend that we're someone we're not because we feel like who we are right now, maybe we're not at the point that we want to be at. But for everyone watching this, I just want to encourage you that if you're watching this, then you're on this journey of personal growth and development. And you can own that. Like, you can tell people that you're on this journey to grow, and you might not necessarily be where you want to be yet, but like, you're on the journey. And just because you're on the journey, you're already so much more attractive than you can ever imagine, because other people want to be around other people who are growing and trying to become better and like being the best version of themselves. So I would just kind of encourage you guys, like, keep going, but also recognize that by you being on this channel and you guys being in this community and interacting with each other and trying to grow, that's a huge amount of value that you have to bring to all relationships, whether it's dating or otherwise. So Drew, I'm curious, like, when was one of those moments when you decided that this was an area of your life that had to change?
Right. Well, it was actually my early 20s, and I'll tell you a really good story. It was actually a point that I wanted to make, because I know everyone, like, whether they're conscious of it or not, most people are conscious of it. They come from a place of not being enough. And it's easy to take that stance. And I'm going to come from a place of judgment here, but it's to make a point. I remember when I was probably 21, 22, I was at this party and I was single, and I saw all these girls that I wanted to like meet and like be with. I'm like, wow, that girl's awesome, that girl's awesome. And a bunch of them had boyfriends right there. So even if I had the skill to engage with them, nothing could be done. They were with these guys. But here's the thing that stuck out to me. And here's where I apologize for being in judgment retroactively when I was 21. These guys were boring. They were, at least from my perspective, they were boring. They were one-dimensional. They weren't funny. They weren't even like super attractive. There was nothing about them that stood out. And you had these gorgeous women that were with them. And it kind of gave me an epiphany. It's like, you really are enough, and you don't have to be special. You already are special. If this guy who is making no impression whatsoever is special enough to have this woman, you are and I am special in these ways that I don't need to perceive and realize. And looking back retrospectively, the one thing that these guys did have was that they were authentic in who they were. So while most people go to a party and they're trying to have the most intelligent conversation, and they're trying to be the funniest, and they're trying to be the center of attention, and they want to stand out, and they want to puff their chest out and all these things, really accepting, not realizing, but accepting the fact that you are enough on a level that you can't perceive, auto-corrects all these little minor tics that you might have where you're coming off as unattractive. It fixes that for you. And when I had that epiphany back in my early 20s, I'm like, I want to really dive deep in and understand the psychology. I understand the psychology of women, understand the psychology of myself. Why was I feeling like not enough? Because, it's bullshit. It's not an authentic story. And, I don't see myself as this, I'm not exactly ready to go into a boy band. I kind of see myself as an average looking guy. But I do know that when I fully engage with a woman, it's more than enough for her, as long as she's open and receptive enough to that. So that really solves a lot of issues. And again, there's no reason to look down on yourself, because it's only counterproductive anyway.
Yeah, 100%. So was there something before you made that shift? Was there something holding you back from pursuing this area of your life, or was it just, you had never focused on it?
Yeah, well, I kind of come from the place that I believe, like, us in society, we experience programming, even if it's not intentional programming. You know, you watch a certain movie or you read a certain magazine and you put pieces together saying, oh, well, this is how I engage with the world, and this is how I'm supposed to be around women, and this is how I'm supposed to look attractive or whatever else. And when I noticed those things not working and not producing result, I said, hey, something's up here, something's off. And really, I was fortunate in that it was like the explosion of the internet, because once I started going online and asking questions and looking about this, basically I kept finding all these details. So really the inspiration and thing that pushed me forward was I kept learning all these things that people were posting online that were complete paradigm shifts about basically saying, you know, and obviously they weren't saying be a sociopath. Obviously I wasn't coming from a place of violence or putting people down or being malicious in any way. I was just coming from a place of not strictly adhering to some way of doing things that isn't necessarily the healthiest way to go about something.
Right. Yeah, and for one of the questions we saw was about whether or not quitting video games is going to help you with your dating life. And we did an evaluation earlier this year where we surveyed people going through the 90-day detox. And there was like over 90 days, there was like a 24% increase in what people said the quality of their dating and intimate relationships was. So yes, quitting video games is definitely going to help you with your dating life. And I know in my own situation, what I realized was I was just gaming to avoid doing things I actually wanted to do. And one of those areas was going on dates and having relationships and doing all of that stuff. So for me personally, when I quit gaming, one of like the biggest motivations I had was I wanted to improve this area of my life. So for anyone watching this, I'm sure many people out there feel that same way. So I would just kind of encourage you, if you want to pursue this area of your life, then yeah, taking a break from gaming, doing the 90-day detox, etc., can really help. Especially because it can boost your confidence, like Hitaru just said.
And Cam, if I may speak to that a little bit further, I come from the philosophy that nature abhors a vacuum. So to answer the question in a different way of will video games, quitting that, make me better? Well, when you suddenly don't have that in your life, taking up space, more space that has to be filled in some other way. So whatever direction you point in, whether it's towards, you know, better friendships or better relationships, whatever, when you don't have something else taking up that space, it's so much easier for you to transition. And, you know, you Cam are a way better expert in this area than me in terms of video game addiction. But, you know, I've done my own research of addiction in general because I do consult with people in many different things. And one video that I stumbled on, the person basically said that addiction, whether it's video games, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's pornography, whatever it is, oftentimes it's the fear or the resistance to emptiness. Because, like, you know, it's a trouble just to sit still and be with yourself. And there's really two ways you can try to improve on that. You can either get very meditative, and I don't recommend against that, but you can get meditative and get used to sitting alone and sitting with yourself and enjoying your own company and seeing how that unfolds. Or you can seek out positive, healthy relationships. Again, whether it's friendships or whether it's a relationship with a woman. And that's really where a good end game is. Like, why not fill up your life with something really awesome where, you know, the video game just becomes a secondary thing?
Yeah. Exactly. So I'm curious, like, what are some of those things in your life other than, you know, your own business and you work a job and, you know, you're passionate about this area of your life? Like, what are some of the hobbies that you have?
Well, I'm nursing a bit of a back injury, so I'm not as good as I used to be, but I used to personally enjoy mixed martial arts. Not even from a competitive place, but just, you know, that the intensity and kind of, you know, being in your body and experiencing that's been good for me. I'm a fan of DDP yoga. that's some people might hear that. It's from Diamond Dallas Page. And I just read a lot. I read a lot of nonfiction. I read kind of about, you know, again, psychology and things like that. And I'm just one person. I mean, you know, it's possible that, you know, I used to draw. It's possible that drawing or painting might be something. You know, sports, like anything that really might fit. But for me, it was more about mixed martial arts, a little bit of drawing back in the day, and reading.
Okay, cool. And so that ties into a question that we got in the chat, which was, for mixed martial arts, do you feel like that helped you develop confidence? And there's this kind of stereotype that in order to be attractive with women, you have to be like the alpha male.
Hmm.
So kind of like what's your take on that?
Right. So the answer is, are women attracted to alpha male? Yes. But a deeper question is, what does that really mean? What does alpha male mean? Because, yeah, you can be an alpha male in the sense that you are dominating and that you'll be the first one to throw hands when something goes wrong or something like that. But if you're not the violent type and you don't want to have to do that, you can still be an alpha male by being rooted in who you are. Meaning, if someone steps to you, it's one thing to cower away, but it's another thing just to do nothing, like, I don't care, I am unaffected. So someone that's deeply rooted in themselves on that level comes even as more alpha, because alpha isn't about dominance over other people. Even though some people do that, it's about dominance over oneself.
Mm-hmm.
So, this actually comes back to like a lot of stuff, and I know we're going to be sharing a link with your people soon. But I actually teach how I give you a copy and paste write-up that you can plug into your dating app profile that gives off alpha male qualities. And obviously, it's not like I'm going to punch somebody in the face via a profile write-up. So what do I do? What do I communicate? Well, I communicate basically that I'm rooted in myself, and I do it in a subtle way of words. And again, it's not a lie. It's true to who you are. But that's the key to really being alpha. When something doesn't really bother you because you're present, and that can't really pierce your boundary.
Yeah, yeah, I fully agree, because I've always kind of like struggled with that feeling of like I don't want to be like a macho man. I want to take steroids just to look like I'm like an alpha male.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have a lot of confidence in myself and what I stand for and what my values are, and remaining in integrity with that. And that comes across in a similar way. So just to kind of like interact with the chat a bit, where are you guys watching from? Type that in the chat. And I was going to ask another question, but the question is this: for you guys in the chat right now, do you guys relate to being more like analytical thinkers, where you feel like structure really helps, and having steps and stuff? Like, do you guys relate to that? And if you do, how many of you guys had gone into like looking up the pickup artist stuff and like going down that path, only to find that you really didn't resonate with it? I'm just curious for you guys in the chat. We already addressed the pickup artist stuff, which is like, in my opinion, when you want to improve the dating area of your life, you're doing that from a very genuine place. You're doing that because you genuinely want to improve this area of your life. So then when you look for advice on the topic, at least especially like a number of years ago, the stuff that you find is all the pickup artist stuff. And that was the only stuff that used to be available. And so there's this disconnect where why you want to improve dating in your life and the information available is different. So you go down this path of trying to learn this area of your life, and then you end up like just feeling like you just got ripped off because you're becoming some weird pickup artist guy who has to like wear a feather boa and like go run up and down the street talking to girls. So you want to improve this area of your life, but you want to do it in a way that's authentic to you and still remains in your values and where you're living from a place of integrity and so forth. So I just want to kind of like bring that up because I think it's a really important point. And for you guys, I know that that's such an important point that bringing on Drew was something that I was really excited about, because from multiple conversations I've had with him on the phone, we had really addressed that and his own take on it. So yeah, so okay, we have Poland here, of course, because Poland is one of the best countries for game quitters. Tucson, Arizona. We got Texas. I know I saw France earlier. So we got people from all over the place. That's awesome. Okay, what questions do you guys have? Type them in the comments. Drew, for you, how do you deal with loneliness with your clients? Like, I'm sure a lot of your clients are coming to you because they feel lonely, and being lonely is a difficult place to start trying to improve your dating life, because you can easily become needy. So
Mm.
how do you interact with your clients in that way?
Right. Well, one, we fix their bad habits as soon as possible, and we get them as many dates as possible. And it's not in the sense of we're treating their dates like disposable people. I mean, if they happen to click with the one, awesome. But if they don't, they keep going. So number one is I get them on a path that they're meeting as many people as people are willing to meet with them. But also I encourage them. This is why I love MMA, because I can go to a class and all of a sudden I'm part of a social group. And if you're not a physically active person, you could very easily go to a meetup that's into artwork, or that's into Game of Thrones, or that's into and whatever else. So just engaging socially, with that whole like relationship thing or just friendship, I try to make sure that's going on. So while they're trying to figure out the woman thing, they're at least making new healthy friends, making new healthy bonds, and just getting a better life experience as they're walking through it.
Yeah, that's a definitely for like if you guys want to improve your social life or your dating life, find group activities. So just like Drew just said, like go to meetups around a certain topic, or I like rock climbing clubs, or going to the gym or joining yoga because you're doing it with a group of people, and then it's easy to strike up a conversation like, oh, like, are you from here, or like what brought you to yoga today, or anything like that. It's just so much easier to meet other people when you're in environments where there's people. It's really hard to meet new people when you're sitting in your house and you're not online, right? Like you have to be in social environments. So Drew, there was a question about NoFap, or the no porn community.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see porn as being an issue? Is that something maybe you struggled with, or your clients struggled with? What do you think about that?
I mean, I'm lucky that I haven't struggled with it, but I've had clients that have, and I've noticed that it's been an issue for people because you're engaging your sexual nature in a way that doesn't really involve an in-person thing. So I've noticed people have they basically get distorted body issues and things like that. I don't want to talk too negatively because everyone has their own choice to make, but I have noticed that that's been a negative impact for people that have engaged in that process.
Yeah, for sure. And, for you guys in this community, I call it the three-headed dragon. There's like gaming, porn, and the internet. And for many people in this community, you're struggling with all three. And all three are kind of similar to, like the brain chemistry component is similar. So it's definitely something you want to be aware of. And I'm going to do a video with Preston Smiles in Tanzania about this, but a thing that he says that I just love is, are you willing to stay true to yourself and not just go seek out other ways of entertaining yourself in order to create the experience that you want, right? So if you're looking for a girlfriend, yet you're going and you're just engaging in porn where you have internet girlfriends, you're not creating space, like Drew said earlier, to be able to even have the opportunity to meet a woman in your real life, because that space in your life is being occupied online. So in order to create that space, you need to not be doing that online. There was a question, Drew, and then I want to get into kind of like some of the structure of how you do things.
Mm-hmm.
So McGill asked, if you initially approach a girl and get to know her but don't express your interest, is it too late to attract her the next time you meet?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
So he asks, if you initially approach a girl and get to know her,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't necessarily express your interest,
Mm-hmm.
is it too late, or is it difficult to be able to express your interest in her afterwards?
So I don't even think the challenge is in whether you express your interest. The challenge is in, did you behave in a way that was needy or unattractive in the beginning? Because people form impressions very fast, and it's not like something where it's impossible to undo that. But once you're operating in a certain way, people are going to see you from that vantage point. I'm a little extreme in the sense, so I don't know if I want to advise other people to do it. But if I really like somebody, if I'm into them, I'll just be like, listen, straight up, I'm kind of feeling you right now. I'm feeling a vibe. If you're up for pursuing this, if you're feeling a little bit of stuff, I'm happy to do it. We don't have to let the we don't have to kill the friendship if you want to try this out. If not, it's all good. I'm really coming from a place of, I'm expressing my interest, but it's non-needing, meaning if you can't handle it, we can just go back. I'm not going to, I'm not going to stalk you, and I'm not going to whimper after it. So again, it's more coming back to being rooted and being who you are. If you're into someone, again, I'm willing to throw away a friendship because maybe I'll say something like that and the girl will be like, oh my God, this is too weird for me now. Even if I don't say it in a weird way, I'm just willing to be like, hey, can we talk about something real quick? And we just sure and be like, I'm just going to be like straight out with this. I'm kind of into you. I'm feeling this. I'm not head over heels or anything, but I'm feeling you. And I think life is short. So I just wanted to tell you. And if you got any interest in seeing where this might go, maybe you want to hang out or something, we can do it. If not, no worries. I'm all good. But what I wasn't going to do is just let life pass by and not even bring it up to you. And that's coming from a real confident place of whatever.
Yeah, I love that, because at the end of the day, and I just did a video on this if you guys haven't seen it, but you have to go for it. And it just comes from this place of like, you get to choose whether you live your life from a place of fear or whether you live your life from a place of love, or whether you live your life from a place of truly seeing what's possible. And a quote that really helped me with this was to be open to all outcomes, but attached to none. So it's about not having those expectations where you can express your interest, and whether she's into it or not, that's totally fine, because you're not attached to it either way. But you're not going to not express your interest just because you're scared of what she's going to say, right? So you get to choose how you show up and the place that you live your life by. And I would just really encourage you guys, and I talk about this like all the time in every video, but the whole point of this is like to truly just embrace your life, go for it in every single way you can, and not hold back just because of some like arbitrary fear that we have. So there's a couple questions that we're going to get to, but Drew, I just want to quickly talk about, I've looked into a lot of your stuff and seen that there's this really interesting balance between having some structure to make it easy for people to take action while still being rooted in authenticity. So I know that you have like another training coming up. I know that, we're going to share a link with the community. So tell us a bit about, how you came up with this system and who it's for, and what are some of the common mistakes that you see.
Cool. So basically the system that I have, I didn't sit down in front of a keyboard and write it. It was an organic process. And this actually goes back to when I was on dating websites, Match, eHarmony. I basically, knowing what I knew about psychology and knowing that I wanted to put my best foot forward, yet still authentically communicate who I am, I came up with ways of wording things that they stand out and they make an impression, and they tell the girl that I'm rooted in who I am and all these things, but they leave space for me to communicate like truths about me, whether, hey, I'm a Game of Thrones nerd, sorry about that, like whatever. And, when dating apps came out and they started picking up steam, obviously I wanted to check them out, and I realized that the whole dynamic had changed. And rather than writing these long emails, now I had to write these short messages. So basically, through this organic process of testing and playing around and experimenting and just matching with women and talking to them, I wrote or rewrote these transition points that guide me in that conversation and her to a place where we're going to meet. We're going to actually meet up in real life, and we're going to see how we get along. And I'm a process-oriented person. So for me, I like creating systems. I like creating things that are reliable because, oftentimes I got so much going on in life. If I match up with a girl on a dating app and she seems cool and I know that I want to get to know her, I like the idea that I can just type in a few things and guide the conversation over literally 5 or 10 minutes, and we've already got an agreement to go out. And again, that's coming from still an authentic place because, when you meet her, you can't hide from her. So there's no tricking them into doing anything. Obviously you want to get that meeting, but you still got to be who you are, because the worst thing that you can do is misrepresent who you are in the beginning and then show up being a completely different person, and then she's completely turned off and nothing ever happens anyway.
Hmm. Yeah. So there's a question. I guess we should have maybe addressed this quickly. What are some of the dating apps that you recommend, and some of them out there? And just quickly, some of them are I think they may or may not be as available in other countries. So you'll kind of have to see that for yourself. But Drew, just give us a list, and then our favorite legendary mad pharmacist. We'll get to that question right afterwards.
Right. Well, I mean, I'll just give a list that you can choose from. You got Tinder, Happen, Bumble, Coffee Meets Bagel, and Hinge. Those are the main ones that I'm on.
How do you spell happen?
Say again?
How's happen spelled? Is it like normal?
Oh, thank you for asking. HAPPN. So it's without the E, and I'll just put it in the chat right there.
Cool. That's what I thought. Yeah. So you guys can definitely check out some of those, and those are apps, but you can also use sites, like just traditional online dating sites as well. Just any way that you can kind of communicate with people. So the question was, and this is a great question, isn't it better to meet new people in real life?
Well, yes, if you can. So in other words, are these opportunities finding their way to you? Like if things happen where you run into people in real life, that's awesome. But I will say this, I usually start off at a better point in the beginning of a date on someone that I met on a dating app versus someone I met in a bar or club who was drunk when I was talking to them. So like, I guess a deeper answer to that is like, how or where or why are you meeting them in real life? Is it something where you guys just like happen to run each other, or you're just really good at starting conversations? Or was this a situation where, again, you were in a club and it was loud and you could barely hear them, both of you were drunk, her friends were pulling her away? So I say, the most important thing is that a connection happens one way or another, and that at one point you meet up in real life, whether you start with the app or not.
Yeah, and for a lot of people watching this, you have social anxiety. Approaching people is going to be a very challenging experience. And although I recommend it, go to a coffee shop, say hi to the people next to you, etc., it can help a lot to begin meeting people just online, to start having those conversations. Because even with some of the clients I work with, if they're interested in improving their dating life, I like to encourage them to just even use dating apps just as an opportunity to even start just learning how to chat with women and flirt and do that sort of thing. Because in quote unquote real life, you might meet a woman, but it might be once a week. Whereas online, you're able to have just many more conversations, and from that be able to feel a bit more confident about your ability to speak to people. So,
and if you're curious and you like starting conversations, awesome. But the one cool thing about a dating website or a dating app is the woman you're talking to doesn't have a boyfriend and is actually interested in making that kind of a connection. So you've got that advantage where, you could walk up to someone in a coffee shop or a library, but they might just have something where it's like, well, I've got a boyfriend, or I'm not into dudes, or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell us a bit about, we're going to get to another question, but tell us a bit about this training that you have. So guys, just so you know, I went through this myself. Drew and I connected, and then I actually went through, he has a training, and I watched it myself. I think it was 30 minutes, if I'm thinking correctly. And I learned something from it. So diving into some of these questions is great, but Drew also has another training that is free and is really good. So you can go to gamequiz.com/Drew to learn more about that, to read some more information, to check out the training. But Drew, just kind of give us a bit about what the training is about and what people get out of it.
Yeah, well, that link that you just sent them to is basically going to be part one of a two-part article on how to amplify and optimize their dating app profile to be more attractive. But they'll have the opportunity to sign up for a training. And I call the training 14 words you can use on your match to instantly spark attraction and get a date. And I know that sounds like a pretty ambitious title, but basically what I do in the training is I walk everyone through a normal sounding sentence that you can plug into your conversation very early in the conversation that steers them in the direction of actually saying, yes, let's meet up. Because the main thing you want to do, and this is where it comes back to still being an authentic person, but finding a strategic way to communicate that authenticity, is when you ask somebody out, you want to make sure to, indirectly note that you're not a needy person, but also phrase things in a way that it's very easy for them to say yes. And I have a train, basically I have a 14-word sentence that I organically kind of came to that I do, and like 90% of the time, it leads to like, hey, let's hang out, let's get a drink and see what's going on. And if you're not into drinks, you could always kind of like choose a different activity instead, of course.
Right. And this is where it's so important to, whether you're meeting online or in person, being able to actually get in person again where you're able to have an extended conversation is huge, because that's where you're going to actually find out if there's a connection or not.
Mm-hmm.
And just going on more dates is a really good recipe to be able to meet, a girlfriend or have a better relationship. So yeah, just like I said, guys, I went through this myself, and I really like it a lot, from a place of being authentic, being rooted in yourself, and not being a weird pickup artist. So you can go gamequiz.com/Drew, check that out. There's a question about virginity anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you kind of think about that? What would you recommend?
Right. So again, I'm a pretty extreme guy. And I would not have said this back when I was a virgin or back when I was younger. So I understand what I'm about to say, that it's easy to say, but I'd just be like, listen, I'm a virgin. Let's, just so you know that this is happening, like I would be completely upfront, completely unapologetic. It's like, hey, this is, just so you know, this is the first time. So, feel free to guide me through, but just don't be surprised at anything, and I'll take my time and I'll be gentle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And also, like, see, this is the thing. It comes out of me without even trying. It's like a joke. It's like, I'll be gentle, don't worry. It's kind of like you're making fun of it. Like, you're not so, you shouldn't be ashamed of it to begin with. But if you were, you're kind of saying like, I'm not even ashamed. I'll even make a joke. Like, I'll be gentle. I won't tear you to pieces because it's the first time in 18 or 20 years that this is ever happening. So, being direct, being humorous around it in a way that's non-deprecating, and just being like, I'm fine. This is what it is. And that's my advice.
Yeah. And for anyone who is watching this, who's a virgin and who feels anxious about it, it's important to remember that from watching all the porn you've watched, your idea of what actually happens in the bedroom is very, very different than what actually happens in the bedroom. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why porn, like, there's this funny joke that said, or maybe not funny, I don't want to have high expectations, but the number one tip for men in a marriage is to not watch porn. The number one tip for women is to not watch romantic comedies, because both set the wrong expectations for what a relationship should be about, right? So if you're a virgin and you're feeling anxious about that, first, just owning it. Like, people don't care nearly as much as you think. In high school, it becomes this like weird expectation that, you're supposed to have lost your virginity when you're super young. But to be honest, like, most people I know lost it after high school. So you don't really need to feel as anxious about it as you do. And if you're watching porn and real life is very, very different. So yeah, you just don't need to feel so anxious about that. And okay, there was a question. Okay, back to our favorite mad pharmacist. So he asked earlier at the beginning of this conversation, mm-hmm, about when the best time to start a sexual relationship with a woman is. Now, mm-hmm, we talked about the first situation, which was if you were just friends. But what if it's the second situation where you're kind of, you've begun going on a couple dates, you're kind of dating, but you haven't taken that step yet. Like, mm-hmm, how do you kind of approach that?
So I come from a place, and keep in mind, this is not an overly aggressive place, but I come from a place where from the beginning of the day, the first date, the tone is set that there's a possibility for a physical connection here. Meaning, at the end of a first date, I will always go in for a kiss, assuming I want to, assuming I like her. And, basically, I'm always gonna escalate, never in a way that I'm forcing myself, but it's basically, I want it to be an expectation. I want it to be understood, like, oh, this person is comfortable with his sexuality. So he didn't mind leaning in for a kiss. He didn't mind taking my hand briefly. or anything like that. So I'm more of a proponent of, do little things subtly and see how she responds. And if she, as long as there's no obvious sign or even not so obvious sign of being against it, just keep rolling it with it and keep how it goes. And obviously just make sure you get consent and that it's understood. But I always go in that direction, because why be apologetic about it? There's nothing to be ashamed about here. And that's the problem. People are ashamed. There's no shame in this.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. I think that nails it super well. So just kind of like wrapping it up, any kind of final questions, and Drew, any kind of final thoughts?
Well, quick apology that I didn't see all the questions or be able to answer them. If there's one way maybe we could figure out to take a thing of like a whole screen grab of all of them, and I could try to answer them and email them to you later on or something. But the final thought I would have is there's a real value in being rooted who you are, and that answers everything. That answers of course I'm going for a kiss on the first date, or of course I'm fine sequencing a dating app conversation that will get us to the meetup. Of course I'm fine if I'm a virgin. Of course I'm fine if anything. It sounds so cliche, but when you come from that rooted area and that rooted energy, a lot of things that you weren't even aware of could be wrong take care of themselves.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Okay, I'm just reading the chat. Matt, tell us what you disagree with, and let's address it. I think healthy debate is good. So there was a question about kind of like sexual energy transmutation. I was able to check that that word. So for me, I think that a big thing in game quitters is like we all experience these different energies. We experience things like cravings, and we experience things like you can feel angry and stuff, but like how you channel that energy matters, right? So when I'm feeling a craving, like I can go to the gym and channel that kind of like, sometimes I get frantic where being able to work is really hard, but I can go to the gym and use that extra energy to push more weight at the gym. So it's more about like identifying the energy that you have and being able to channel it in whatever way you want. So I think that's like the point. And again, guys, you guys have to experiment with all of this yourself. Like at no point is any of this exactly how you should do it, because you are unique, and the way that you approach and the way that you think about it matters a lot. So I think it's really important that like you have an open mind and you try different things, but at the end of the day, you have to identify what works for you. And these are just ideas. These are just ways to experiment. And yeah, that book by Kamal Ravikant is a great book. Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. I've read it. Great book. Any final thoughts from chat? And Drew, where can people find you if they want to kind of learn more?
Right. Well, the link that you gave them, I think you said it was gamequitters.com/Drew.
Yep.
That'll take them to a special link for them at higherleveldating.com, where it'll give them an article on the psychology behind putting out the right kind of dating app profile. So that's probably a really good introduction. I mean, I'm on Amazon. If you search for me, I've got a book, The Secret to a Successful First Date, The Ultimate Guide to Speed Dating Success, but I think your link is probably a great starting off point. And quickly, just because I want to give value to the group, I know not everything I said that you necessarily need to agree with, but also one person asked, like, what if you're not fine with yourself in the beginning? Just remember, everything is a daily process. And to this day, even if I'm not okay with everything about myself. Everything's a journey. I always run into roadblocks, and I just take them on, and I do everything I can to handle it. And really, if you just do some research about, like, loving yourself. I put the book, Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It by Kamal Ravikant. If you read that book and you put that on Amazon, Amazon will all of a sudden start recognizing other books that you might be interested in. But really, it's just a day-by-day thing of accepting yourself more and more to whatever level you can. And it's never going to be perfect, and it's never going to be dead on right away. But it's all about momentum. And over time, with every day, with every date, with every moment, with every situation, you become more rooted in who you are and you become happier, and you distance yourself from the video game addiction and you distance yourself from all the other issues, and it just becomes a more fulfilling journey. It's never going to be perfect, but it doesn't have to be. You can still be happy.
Yeah, nailed it. So yeah, thanks so much, guys, for being here. Thanks so much, Drew, for sharing all of your perspective and your advice. And it's just one perspective, right? I have one perspective. Even in the last video, I said, like, don't let anyone else tell you how you should do anything, not even me. And although I can share my perspective, my experience, I can share kind of like what's worked for me or ideas I have, and Drew can as well. At the end of the day, you have to try things for yourself and learn what works for you. And at the end of the day, like, that's what it all comes down to. So it's so important, and I guess I'll wrap up on this. It's so important to be open-minded, because sometimes we get too focused on one thing works, one thing doesn't, when there can be a variety of factors as to why that is. So sometimes it's just try things, see what works, try something else, see what works, and don't be too like stubborn on this thing worked for me or it didn't, because sometimes things change. Like a couple of years ago, I thought, or so growing up, I thought yoga was totally shit because I was forced to go through like hockey. And now I think yoga is like the best. So sometimes, like, as you change and your experiences change, so can what works for you. But at the end of the day, you just have to find what works for you and always experiment and keep an open mind, because things work for different people. And I guess final question, I have a video on favorite podcasts. So you can check that out. And yeah, we're going to do more live streams in the future. I like to kind of hop on here and interact with you guys. So always trying to bring some friends on. I'm going to bring my friend Nita on soon, because she's a doctor in helping people with emotions, mastering your emotions. And I think like that's a huge topic, obviously, in Game Quitters. So I'm going to keep bringing different friends on that I have that have really good perspectives, in my opinion, and can help you guys out. And really appreciate you guys being here. So if you guys are watching this afterwards, make sure you guys leave a comment below, and either myself or Drew will be in there to answer those questions. And yeah, hope you guys have a great day.
Take care, guys.